Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we're releasing a bonus episode. This is actually an episode that we recorded quite a while ago, almost 3 years ago now, called Pure Determination with Gold-Medalist Derek Parra. And that was episode 31, released on December 17th, 2020. Wow, this is going to be a little bit cringy, but it's one of my absolute favorite stories. So, the reason I'm releasing this today is we just found out here in Salt Lake City that we will be hosting the 2034 Olympics, which is absolutely amazing. It's not completely official yet, but there are no other bids for 2034, and they have pre-approved Salt Lake City to host the games, which was just such a wonderful event when it was here back in 2002. They really did an amazing job and put on quite the show. The Olympic Committee around here has done also an amazing job keeping all of the Olympic facilities up and running. I go and skate all the time over the Olympic Oval, which is about 15 minutes from my house. I play hockey there. I did some speed skating there quite a while ago. And that's kind of what this is about. It was about 10 years ago that I decided, not only did I want to play hockey, but I wanted to do something in the wintertime. And I was kind of thinking maybe I should go cross-country skiing and learn how to do that. Maybe I should do, I don't know, something else. And I decided that since the Olympic Oval was so close, I'm already a pretty quick skater on hockey skates. I thought I might go try speed skating. So I jumped into a Learn to Speed Skate program, which is basically like a Learn to Swim program with a bunch of kiddos who were like just barely learning the sport. And it was so different to put on speed skates. They're completely different than hockey skates. They are razor sharp and only have one edge, where hockey skates have two edges. So you're really just like sliding around all over the place until you figure out how to kind of pivot and how to like drive your skate into the ice the right way. And as I was going to this program, this Learn how to speed skate hockey program, I saw that the coach for this program, the guy running the show, was Derek Parra. And I, of course, recognized him from the 2002 Olympics after his very famous gold medal win. You're going to hear that entire story in this podcast. And he was amazing. We'll talk about it again in the show, but like, he treats his Olympic athletes the same way he treated me, the same way he treated some of the 8-year-olds taking the class. Like, he was coaching everybody along. He was super positive, and I absolutely loved working with him. So in celebration of Salt Lake City hosting the 2034 Olympic Games, I wanted to re-release this one. It was one of my favorites. It's one that we released when we had very few listeners, so I'm sure a lot of you out there haven't heard it. So I really hope you enjoyed this bonus episode of our pre-recording of Pure Determination with gold medalist Derek Parra here on Boundless Body Radio. And welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I am here today at the Utah Olympic Oval with a good friend of mine. Derek Parra is a former long track gold medalist in the 2002 Olympics in this very building. His rise to the top was just absolutely amazing. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. He is the author of the book Reflections on the Ice, and he is now currently the sport director here at the Utah Olympic Oval in Utah. Welcome.
Thanks, Casey.
We're going to start out with a listener question, and it's not a listener question. It was pretty much ubiquitously across the board what everybody wanted to know. Where is the gold medal?
It's actually wrapped in an American flag that I got from a spectator after my 5,000 meter here, which ended up being a silver medal. I have it wrapped up in that inside of a Ziploc bag, circa 2002, and in my drawer dresser, actually, my dresser drawers would say,
Wow.
My nightstand. It's just, I don't bring it out very much unless I talk to some kids, or go out and speak. But the woman that gave me that flag was just a spectator who happened to come in the building, sat next to my father for the 5,000 meter race. That was a shocking race to everybody. No one knew that I would place, and I wasn't top 10 in that race. If I was 10th, I was 10 seconds behind the leaders. And when I went up,
eternity in speed skating.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a half a lap.
Yeah,
you're not even on the camera view. So I went up after my silver to say hi to my dad. He had never seen me skate before. I was 32 years old.
Wow.
We can get into that later about me growing up, but that was his first time seeing me race, and so for him to witness my first Olympic race to be a silver medal with briefly holding the world record, I ran up I almost got hit by that. You know that camera that kind of follows the skaters around?
Oh, yeah.
That camera was coming around, and I actually just missed it because someone yelled out, "Look out!" And as I was climbing the barriers to get up to the stands, and as I was there with him, he gave me a big bear hug, and this woman kind of jumped in between us and said, "That was awesome, Derek." And I'd never met her before, right? And she gave me this flag and said, "Here, go around the infield and run around and wave the American flag." So I gave my brother as well, who was there, a hug, and I said, "Okay, I'll do that," and she kind of talked me into it. So I walked down on the center ice, was running around, with the American flag over my head, and then there was a flower ceremony in the facility where we could kind of, salute the crowd. Went back up to give it to her, and she said, "No, just keep it. I want you to have it." And I said, "No, I can't keep the American flag." And she says, "No, Derek." And she kind of put her arm around my dad a little bit and said, "I've been sitting here with your father and everything you've gone through in your life." And she pretty much tells me my story in about 5 minutes. And she says, "I would be honored for you to have it." And I said, Well, thank you. I'll keep it. I'll cherish this. And I hadn't even got to my gold medal race yet, but she quickly said goodbye, gave me a hug, kiss on the cheek, gave my father a hug and kiss on his cheek, and she walked away. I looked at my dad and I said, "Who is that?" He said, "I have no idea." It was just this woman who had a ticket next to my dad and a seat next to him, got involved in everything that was going on, saw the Parra shirts, the team Parra shirts he had on, and just had a great experience in that race and decided to give me this American flag of hers. And so she, to me, is so symbolic of the hundreds, maybe thousands of people in my life from the time I left home when I was 17 to the time I won that medal that have just, for some reason, saw the dream in me, stepped forward, and either by gesture or by providing an opportunity to me to continue to go forward in a sport that I couldn't afford to do, whether it was financial or emotional or whatever it was, they made it possible for me to keep moving forward, and there I was at the game. So
that's amazing.
I keep my medal on that every day.
That's a great story. That's a great story. And for the listener, we are at the Oval. We are literally in an office overlooking the Oval where that happened 18 years ago. And it's like Derek is pointing out the window to show where that happened. It's right here. It's so cool. You mentioned leaving your home while you were growing up when you were 17, but tell me a little bit about you growing up before then.
I got to believe my childhood was unlike or different to any other kid in the 70s. I was born in 1970. My parents were divorced. I lived with my father and my brother, in a 2-bedroom house in San Bernardino, California. And a typical day for me was, I guess, pretty significant. And what I guess most kids would do these days, or even back then, is get up. My dad was a correctional officer. He would wake up about 6 in the morning. He'd wake us up. He'd leave for work. We'd get ourselves ready, eat breakfast, grab our sack lunches or something, and walk a 6 or so block to school. We had a key for our house on a shoestring we put around our neck to lock our front door, and we'd come back after school, and we usually go out and play stickball in the streets. And, we used manhole covers and trees for bases, and an old broomstick that was broken, and maybe a sock that was wadded up with duct tape, and that was our ball. And we'd play until the street lights came on. My dad came home from work about 6 p.m. at night, it seemed like. He'd whistle, we'd come inside, eat dinner, watch some TV, do our homework, go to bed, and that was it. That was my life. Played baseball a little bit from 8 to 12 years old with some neighborhood kids, on an actual Pop Warner team, type organization, and that was it. But nothing really special. But for me, my life changed when I went to a roller rink when I was 14 years old.
Wow, roller.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, my brother went with a friend down the street. And when you have older brothers, sisters, or older siblings, you want to be just like them. They brag to you what they did. And he came home one night and said, "Oh, that was awesome. There was, the disco ball and lights and music, and there were girls there and all these things. As you're a young kid." And so immediately I wanted to go, but it wasn't cool for my brother to take me. Right? He's not going to be seeing his younger sibling there. So I begged him for months, and I was doing his chores. I was, cleaning our room, whatever I could, because out of the promise he would take me, and he never would. And my dad got so irritated with me begging all the time. He finally said, "That's it. You're taking him this weekend." And my brother was not so happy, but I was super excited. And that Friday night, we went to the roller rink. My dad kind of dropped me off and gave me $4 and said, "Get it out of your system," kind of thing. And little did he know, right? But I went in, paid the $4, got inside and saw the disco ball and the lights and the music, and thought it was the coolest thing. Because I had never really done anything. I went from school to home and played out in the streets with my friends. Never saw anything like this. We didn't watch a lot of TV when we were kids. It was just at night sometimes. My dad was home, but this was a totally new experience. I met kids whose parents, weren't divorced, and kids who weren't Mexican American or African American like I was, and that was my neighborhood. That's all I saw. I saw, all these different kids, and I got to chat. I'm a pretty chatty guy, as you've known over the years, and just started talking to kids. But immediately, my problem became I didn't have any money. My dad gave me $4. Admission and skate rental was $3.75. I didn't have any money. Wasn't good at video games because we couldn't afford an Atari back then. So I put my quarter in a game machine, and it was gone in 30 seconds. So I found myself at the side of the roller rink just watching kids have fun, thirsty, the side of the floor. And luckily, there was a 2-lap race that night, and I learned every Friday night there's a 2-lap race for age groups. And if you won your age group, you got a ticket for a free drink in a snack bar, and that is the only reason why I stepped out there to race. And I discovered something in that race, even though I got last. I felt something inside me, a passion I never knew I had for skating or being on skates, that still today burns inside me, whether I'm playing hockey as a 50-year-old out in the recreational league or out skating around with the speed skaters. I love being on skates, and I would have never known that if I didn't go to that rink that night.
That is an absolutely amazing story. I remember going to a roller rink. I think I was about your same age when I went to one. And the only memory I have is that awful, I think they called it the snowball, where all the boys would be on one side, all the girls would be on the other, and you had to pick partners and skate a song. And it was super,
I didn't know. I never saw that before.
Awkward. Oh, it makes me cringe just thinking about that.
The snowball.
Yeah, I think that's what it was called. It was just terribly awkward as a 14-year-old. So you knew that competition pretty quickly. Well, first of all, it was mostly for a drink or food. But when did it turn into something more for you?
I don't really think I thought about the performance side of it for a few years. I always thought about it in practice, right? Because but more importantly for me, it was with my friends. I was meeting these friends that were unlike anything around my neighborhood. I lived in not the best neighborhood. There was a lot of crime, a lot of drugs, and so I didn't have a lot of great role models. My dad and I weren't super close, although he was there. We were there elbow to elbow every day at the dinner table. I didn't really know him. I couldn't talk to him. I couldn't show any emotion with him. He was a correctional officer and pretty stern and very. What's the word I'm looking for? He had some pretty hard lines as a parent raising my brother and I. So we got in trouble a lot for just little things that, like they say, spilt milk. I would get in trouble for spilled milk. It was just that kind of atmosphere. But if by design, I think everything he taught me while raising me helped me to survive when I left home because he was so hard on us. I felt like it made me stronger when I got to a point where I could have either tucked tail and went home or stayed the course. So I'm grateful for him for that. But when we were growing up, it was a different story, in the mind of a child. And so I didn't have a lot of interaction at home socially. So going to the roller rink, it was great because I met these great kids, friends that I still have to this day.
Wow.
That we talked to. Jason and Steve Cecil, Steve Decker, John Darby, these kids that were just around me that let me be part of their group. I learned from them. I admired them. They had great parents who would take them to the rink every day. My parents never took me to the rink. I would have to walk across this field over train tracks to the main road and have my friends come down and pick me up to take me to the rink, and then they'd drop me off, and then I'd call back over the train tracks back in my neighborhood. And so these were people that really helped me get to the rink and kept the dream, or actually started the dream, I should say. And so for my first few years, it was all about hanging out with them, going to the roller rinks, skating couple skate with the girl you met at the roller rink or whatever, backward skating, whatever. And then you have these races, and that was it. And it wasn't until at one point where I felt like I had some kind of talent for this sport. And I wasn't very good. If you looked at the way I skated, I wasn't smooth at all. You could see I was working for every bit of speed I had, and there were skaters that were very smooth and technically sound. I wasn't like that. But I developed a passion by that time to compete, and was going to these races, in the local area, California, Arizona, Nevada State, that tri-state area, and I won regionals. But I went to nationals my first year and got absolutely blown away. Went to my nationals my second year, blown away. Went to nationals my third year, and I might have made it out of a heat into a semi. So after 3 years, I'm 17 now. I was working harder and harder, skating with my group of friends here at the roller rink a few times a week, and I wasn't any good. I thought I was good. I was great in California. I was a regional champion, but I was, out of the 24 skaters that made it to nationals, I was last.
And this is inline.
This is roller space, so quad skates, the toe stop and the four wheels.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, this is back in the day. I'm ancient.
Wow.
So, I went to a few national events there, but when I was there, I met a coach named Virgil Dooley, who was a very nationally renowned coach. If I had to describe him, he looked like kind of like a Don Shula, the old coach from the Miami Dolphins. He always had a toothpick in his mouth, and was just had a huge team. And every year there's probably 18 national placements from his team. And I heard his name, I knew his face, but he saw me racing, and one time I don't know why, I got blown away again. My typical strategy was, let's say a 20-lap race. I'd win the start, I'd go out and I'd take off, attack the group, and I'd be out in a half lap ahead of the whole group for about 15 of the 20 laps. And sure enough, someone about 5 laps to go would pick up the pace, the group would get together, they'd catch me, pass me, and I'd get last. Happened every time. It was my signature move, right? Never worked. And he saw that, and he thought I had a lot of heart, but I had no brains for racing. And he came over to me and very, very nicely, very kindly put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Hey, Derek, great job out there, but you don't know how to race." And I looked at him thinking like, yeah, you're right. But no one ever taught me that. My coach in California, he just had us doing relays and skating, getting kind of stronger out of activity rather than strategizing. So he said to Virgil at that time, said to me, "If you ever get serious, give me a call." And he knew I could look him up somehow, and I don't know how serious he was, but I took that to heart right there. Went back home to California, again, 17, started my senior year of high school, and realized that I could, because I was taking accelerated courses, AP classes, I could push my credits forward and graduate early. So I did that. I opted to. I talked to my parents, and I said, I said, "Hey, what do you think about me going to Florida?" And he said, "Why?" I go, "I want to try and get better at this sport." And he goes, "All right." Didn't really ask any other questions. My mom, who I was very emotionally attached to, because she was divorced from my father, but we talked weekly, and I could share my emotions with her and tell her about a girl I liked or whatever it was, or how skating was going. And she was a bit of a marathon runner when she was younger, so she understood how it wasn't really acceptable. Like roller speed skating in the Mexican American culture is not existent. I mean, my dad, he drove 30 miles to watch me wrestle, went to every baseball game, every football game, but he wouldn't go 7 miles down the road to see me roller skate. Just didn't get it. Or my mom was that way with marathon running. Her family didn't get it. But at that time, it wasn't feminine to be an athletic woman. So she would always talk to me about encouraging me, and she said, "Well, what's out there? What could happen?" I go, "I don't know. I could maybe make a national team or a world team or something." And she goes, "You should do it, and you don't want to look back years from now and say I would have or I could have or I should have." And so with those words, I said, all right. So I was already, mowing lawns and, and selling clothes and toys to try to get to the roller rink every weekend. Now I started saving up for a flight to go to Florida, and I called up Virgil and said, "I'm going to do it." And he said, "Okay." He was kind of surprised. And on February 8th of 1987, I had a one-way ticket that went from Ontario, California to Tampa, Florida. And that experience, that flight changed my life.
That's amazing. That's amazing, because Florida is the mecca of inline. Is that correct?
It was, yeah. It's probably still to this day, but back then for sure. Yeah. Just great, great temperature, great weather. You can skate any time of the year, and there were huge teams out there. You did have some great teams in the Michigan Midwest area, just because it was so cold. People trained indoors, and they got really good. But Florida had a lot of the top athletes.
Interesting. Now, did I misspeak when I said inline? At this point, are you still on quad skates, or are you
still
inline?
On quads at that time? So, 92 is what the first year that inline skates were adopted into our federation. But up until there, it was just the four-wheel skates.
Wow. That's so crazy. There's a really famous story that you've talked about before at McDonald's.
Which one?
Part of you scrapping and working so hard was financial to survive, and part of that is eating.
Yeah. And
so what things would you have to do to be able to get a bite?
Well, when I moved to Florida, my dad gave me $200 in Travis checks. That was kind of his gift of, good luck. And in about 2 weeks, that was all gone. Because, back in 1987, 1988, living at home with $200 is probably a lot of money that you can go on. But when you're by yourself, it goes pretty quick. And I rented a room from Virgil. I was paying coaching fees, rent, buying my own food, and anything else I had to do there. So it went quick. And after 2 weeks, I was basically writing IOUs to Virgil, like a can of soup, a Pop-Tart, a Hot Pocket, whatever he had in his cupboards. And I was trying to find a place to work, but no one allowed me to work the hours I needed to, because Virgil had me training 4 to 6 hours a day. Our regimen back then was getting up in the morning, going to skate in a church parking lot outdoors for a couple hours, coming home resting, and then riding 32 miles to practice. And I learned that on my first day because Virgil came up to me and said, "Hey, you might want to get ready for practice. And I said, what time is practice?" He goes, "Well, it's at 4," and it was 2 at the time. And I said, "Well, what time are you leaving?" Because again, my parents used to take me.
Yeah.
He says, "Derek, I probably should have told you this before, but in order to live in my house and train on my team, you got to ride your bike to practice, so you can't skate practice." And I said, "Well, where's the rink?" He said, "It's in Tampa." And we lived 32 miles away. So luckily I had some friends that were on the team that lived in the area that helped me get there, but by the end they were pushing me because I did not have the stamina to get. I never even rode 10 miles in my life at one time.
It's brutal.
Now I'm riding 32 miles just to get to practice. Worst practice of my life. I fell. I was so fatigued, but it definitely opened my eyes to what Virgil's training was like. But as that was happening, again, I was going through food and all the expenses. I got a job at McDonald's, which was great because they allowed me to work early in the morning. But as you know, when you get a job, you don't get a paycheck right away. So there was 2 more weeks I had to work in order to get a paycheck. And it got to the point where I just, it's hard to say, I was eating out of the trash cans at McDonald's to stay alive. And But it wasn't like I was coming at night when no one was there. There's a loophole in what I call the mixed system. And I found that on the first day through your employee training. And they have a rule that if, I was the guy making egg McMuffins, right? I came in, I turned on all the heating vats, put the Teflon sheets on, cracked about 100 eggs for the egg batter, got everything ready so that when the crew came in, we could start making breakfast. And so when I'm in the back making stuff, like someone orders an egg McMuffin, and there's none in the rack, in the heating rack, I would make 4 or 5. And then I'd make those, wrap them, put them in the heating bin. And let's say I put them in at 8 a.m., I had to put a number 2 behind that last egg McMuffin because that 2 signifies 10 after 8. And if at 10 after 8, those sandwiches aren't sold, the manager comes by and just throws them in the trash because they're not considered fresh by McDonald's standards. So the first day I'm there and I'm starving, I see this happen. I thought to myself, "You got to be kidding me."
It's food.
Yeah. So sure enough, by about 10:45, the manager would come around and say, "Okay, who wants to take the trash out before the changeover to lunch?" And I'd throw my hand up, "I will."
Yep.
And he'd pick me. I'd go out. I'd take all the trash cans from the back grill area and the front lobby and the bathrooms and whatever. And I would I knew what trash can those sandwiches were in, and I would double knot those. And I'd go out to the back dumpster, and when no one was looking, I'd pull to that double knot, and I would just eat as many egg muffins or whatever was in there I could. And that was my meal for the day.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it's probably not fun to look back on in those times and how dark they were, but it's just such a testament to how hard you work and how much you could scrap to get what you wanted. And in your skating career, you were quite successful in Florida. Is that right?
Through Virgil and his coaching, that he taught me how to break down the sport technically and taught me about training, which I still believe this day he was probably one of the best trainers. I'm not sure what education he had, but he had so much experience in skating.
Wow.
That a lot of the stuff that we did on ice, he was doing on inlines years before. So he took me to top. I mean, I got there and I was nobody. And in a few years, I made a U.S. World Team tryout, had made my first World Team in 1989, so just a year and a half later. And I was on it until 1996 when I left the sport to come to ice. And in that time, I had won 18 world titles, set 2 world records, and was the most decorated athlete in the sport at that time. And that's when we went through the transition of inlines as well. But he had such a great mind for skating, and he just gave great examples. He was really good with me as far as I didn't have a lot of money to help to pay for extra lessons. So he would have me come and lead the younger kids, and he would teach them everything that I needed to know as well. But I was the leader. He wouldn't charge me because I was leading for the kids, but everything he was teaching, I needed to learn. And so he really just I mean, the guy's like a dad to me. I still consider him my father figure, and we still are in touch and we talk, and he's just one of the best people I've ever met in my life.
Wow. Special relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Him and his wife and his family, and they took me in as theirs at one point. So when they moved from Florida to Maryland, I followed them. From Maryland to Delaware, I followed them, and that's where my career went with him. Interesting.
So tell me about the transition over to ice. I mean, that's a big decision. Those things are very, very different. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I think the allure of the Olympics is what really drove us. And when I say us, it's because there was a big group that came over at that time. A skater named Casey Boudier, who was an inline skater as well. He and I, same age. We met each other a couple of times over the years of skating. He left the sport, came back, was a great athlete. And in our time in roller sports, we always were told by the organization of, we're going to get in the next Olympics. We're going to be the next one and the next one. And we all heard that year after year after year.
And Summer Olympics, right?
Yeah, Summer Olympics. But it never happened. The biggest, I guess the biggest competition you could go to as a roller skater or inline skater is the World Games or the Pan American Games, which is at the time was the second biggest summer sporting event to the Olympic Summer Games. So I made a Pan Am team. I experienced all the bells and whistles of the opening ceremonies and walking behind your team's flag. I had a great, and I was in Mar del Plata, Argentina. I had the most medals of any athlete, 5 golds, 2 silvers and a bronze. Got hit by a car in one of my races that I won. But when I came back, I mean, that was my first Olympic type experience. Sure. And I was waiting and hoping that 96 would include would include roller sports in the Summer Games in Atlanta. Well, it happened. It didn't. They didn't do it. They didn't accept it. But in '94, Casey Boudier got tired of waiting as well. And with the Lillehammer Games coming up in Norway, he had left the sport of roller skating. He goes, I'm gonna go try ice skating, because in the years when '92 when inline skating came into our sport, a lot of people saw the similarities between an inline skating blade and an ice skating blade and the technical side of it. So skaters were going to these different ice rinks around the country in their areas that had ice speed skating teams and throwing on a pair of ice blades on their inline skates and seeing if they could mimic that technique and get better on inline skates. Apollo Ono, probably the most famous person, he was, I think, 10 or 11, maybe 12, when he went to this rink in Seattle, Washington, and someone said, "Whose kid's that?" Like the coach said, "Whose kid's that? Where is this kid?" Because Apollo, if you've seen him race, he floats on the ice.
Oh, he's
incredibly
so
gifted, right? And he, to me, one of the smartest racers, the most disciplined athletes as far as training and when to rest and when to compete and how to watch his weight and how to manage his extracurricular activities. But he was a kid that was really young. They saw him. He left inlining right away, and he was young, had more time to kind of master that skill. But Casey spent some time on the ice, went to Milwaukee about 2 months before the Olympic trials of '97, won the distance Olympic trials. He won the 5K and 10K race, earned a spot to go to the Olympics in Lillehammer, Norway. But because he didn't have a qualifying time, he couldn't race those distances. And then he did have a time for a 1,500 meter, and then Dan Jansen, who won his 1,000 meter gold finally in Lillehammer, he scratched a 1,500 meter race 2 days before his 1,000 meter event, and Casey got to skate it. So I remember Casey calling me from Norway going, dude, I'm skating the Olympics. And I was green with envy. But again, I was number 1 in the world on roller skates, so I was waiting for that 96 to come for Atlanta in the Summer Games. But when it didn't come, I called Casey up and said, hey, can I come out to Milwaukee? That's where he was living. And he says, sure, dude, come on out. So I came out, got a ticket, came out there, got off the plane, was 54 below zero. I almost jumped back on the plane. I'm a summer guy, right? I'm Mexican-American, I was a summer guy. And brutal. It was brutally cold there, but I was there for a few days. I kind of caught on. It wasn't great, but the push is completely different. To me, I tell kids it's like overhand baseball and underhand softball. The ball gets to the same target, right? Same destination, but getting there was so technically different. And that's how ice skating was compared to inline skating. And all the good habits that I had on inlines were not good on ice. Wow. I was fit at a great aerobic capacity, but I had no real deep power and a good sit position. And I was pushing too early across my blades where they would slide across the ice rather than wait and grip. Yep. And that was really the root of my problem for the next 6 years of trying to find out how to change my thought process and realign my steps internally to help me be a better ice skater.
Sure. And I'm sitting here shaking my head because, I don't think the average listener would know how different these skates are, because I've been a hockey player all my life, and it was 2014. I decided I want to do some cross training. I want to mix something up. So I think I'm either going to speed skate or I'm going to cross country ski. And the Oval is 15 minutes from my house, so I'm going to just drive over to the Oval. I'm going to rent some skates. I'm going to throw them on, and I'm going to be great because I've skated my whole life and I know how to skate. And I step on the ice on these speed skates and almost fall flat on my face and skated as horrible style as you could possibly imagine. And they are so hard to get used to. The way the edges work is completely different. They're curved. They're bent in a different way. Like the skate is so difficult. And so I just think it's so crazy that you went from inline to ice and were successful for it. In fact, you qualified for Nagano.
Yeah, I did.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Like I said, when I came to the sport, I was a good athlete, and luckily I had won 2 bronze medals in the national championship that I qualified for that first year. But I was way behind. It was a 5K and 10K races, and I was way behind the leaders. I think at the time it was Dave Tamburino and Casey Boudier who were the best American distance skaters. They got first and second, and at the time the best skaters went first, so I was one of the last pairs to go. But I had beat the best of the rest, and nobody knew who I was. I got a little medal, but no one told me, hey, you should be ice skating or anything like that. I remember leaving Milwaukee, going back to Delaware, where I was living at the time, and thinking, well, gave it my best shot. But luckily, about 2 weeks later, the national team coach, Gerard Kempkers, called me up and said, hey, by virtue of your placements, we want to invite you to the national team in a discretionary spot. No funding, but you'll be able to skate the best skaters in the country.
Wow.
The Olympics are in a year and a half. And I just said, what I got to do? He goes, got to move to Milwaukee. So that was immediate decision, because I'd won everything I could in inline skating. The Olympics were out there, and that was my dream at that point. And I wanted just to go to the Olympics, walking behind my country's flag. I'd probably get last, but I would compete as Olympian, and I could move on with my life.
Amazing.
So I moved to Milwaukee. Had a really tough time. I felt like I was getting worse than better, just because the training was so different. I went from 126 pounds as the best inline skater in the world to 150 pounds of more muscle and girth from being in the weight room so much as the ice skaters do when they train, and went to be 33rd in the world. Like I wasn't the same athlete. My endurance capacity was getting weaker, and I had less of that. My power was getting a little bit better, but I couldn't apply it to the ice because the technique was so different. So luckily, somehow I qualified for the 98 games to go to Japan. I called my parents. This would have been the first time they would have seen me race, but I got there. Was 32 in the world, which was the last qualifying spot for the 5,000 meter. Super pumped. We're in the village for about 10 days getting ready to compete for the games. And on the night before the 5,000 meters, which is the first event of the Olympic Games, the pairing lists come out. They tell you who you're racing against and what pair you're in, or what time you race. The list came out, my name wasn't on it. So immediately my coaches went to the officials and said, what's going on? We don't have our American skater here. And they said he didn't qualify. And he said, what? Well, what had ended up happening was a skater from the country of Kazakhstan, his team leader misentered his time. And he was 0.012 seconds faster than me. So when I got there, I was automatically put in 32nd, but he was more like 33rd because of his time ranking. But when they went over the final entries the night before the race, they saw the discrepancy and said, nope, let's go double check that. Went back to a competition, and it was misentered. He got bumped to 32. I was bumped to 33. Oh. So I was there at the games in the village, and I couldn't skate, and I was absolutely devastated. I remember being 28 years old, going into a corner of the Olympic Village between the Chinese and the Japanese, Ukrainian Olympic Village dorms, and hiding in a little corner and bawling my eyes out. In whatever 30, 40 degree weather, just sitting there crying, going, what the heck? What I gave up so. I was broke. I had saved up $30,000 in my race winnings from inline skating when I was at the top of the world in that sport. And in that year and a half, I went through $30,000. I was literally broke. I was going paycheck to paycheck. I think I owed my rent when I went to Japan, and my landlord said, just pay me when you get back, because I didn't have money. It was just a really hard time in life. And then on top of that, you told you can't skate. So I came back to the U.S. I mean, I stayed there, and I helped my teammates. I was a gopher. I brought water bottles and bags and whatever I could to help them live their Olympic dreams. But I came back to the U.S. just not knowing what to do. And then coincidentally, our coach, Gerard Kempkers, left the U.S., and there was about 6 months that we didn't have a coach. So for 6 months, I trained my own. I just went back to what I'd done on inlining. I lost a lot of weight, did a lot of running, talked to Virgil, my coach. He said, I think you're doing some things wrong out there from what I've seen and what I can gather from ice skating. And together we chatted, and I made my own program. And then 6 months later, a new coach came in. We communicated very well. He gave me a chance to do some of my own workouts that I liked, that I thrived on as an athlete. And in the next 4 years, every year I got better and better and started to figure out the skates, figure out the bend, my niche in the sport, my physiology of what race is better for me, what races aren't good for me. and really focused on doing my best here in 2002.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, okay, so I remember an interview that was done in 2014. This was after the skeleton. It was one of our American racers who, after I want to say it was after the third heat, one more heat to go, he's in medal position. And this is like amazing for a skeleton racer. And he starts his fourth and final heat. He needs to have a good run, but if he does reasonably well, he gets a medal, which is just crazy. And as he starts his run, there's a little blip in his sled, and it just pops out of the groove.
Oh, I think I remember this.
And I can't remember what it's called. There's a name for it. A buddy of mine's a skeleton guy. I'll have to ask him. But you jump the rut or something, you're toast. Now your sled is not going to go in a straight line. You lost a few hundredths or a few tenths of a second. You're gone. You're done. And the guy gets off his skeleton, and the reporter was like, "Wow, so your hopes and dreams dashed in one little move. How do you feel?" It was the worst interview question ever. But I just think, like, for an Olympic athlete, you're once every 4 years. I mean, you do races and compete, and those are also a big deal, but the biggest deal is the Olympics. It's once every 4 years. If I get suspended from an NBA game, that sucks, but I can come back the next day and play again in 2 or 3 days. But to be completely devastated and still want to be in that sport, I just think is so amazing. Like, again, such a cool sign of resilience and scrappiness on your part to get back and to improve. And then 2002 comes.
Well, yeah, thank you. It definitely is something that I was passionate about, and it was very driven. And that's the hard thing about the sport and these kids today too, is that it's not a full-time job. I had to work. I worked at Home Depot while I was skating to supplement my. I was going to
absolutely mention that. That's great. I want to talk about Home Depot.
Okay, I love talking about them. They were the single reason why I was able to skate. But I had to work a job while I was training. You never know if you're going to get enough money to make the rent. You recover from training. There are also all these expenses that come along with it, and you're basically putting your life on hold. And a hard story for me to see a lot just recently was Brittany Bowe. Brittany Bowe, last season, she won everything. I mean, between the 500, 1,000, and 1,500 meter World Cups, I believe she's on the podium in each one of those distances 100% of the time. She might have missed one podium once out of all the World Cups last year. And the last race of the year, the one that is most important to the American team and the selection process, is the World Single Distance Championships. That, to the U.S. Olympic Committee, is the deciding event that will bring you funding or no funding, because that's a mirror image of the Olympics. You get one shot, that's it. So Brittany had won everything all year, shown how dominant she was, and she gets sick for the last weekend of racing, and she may have gotten 8th or 6th. So for someone that dominant all year, the one competition she needed to perform well at, she couldn't. She was just ill. She was below par, didn't get funding.
Brutal.
So if you think about that on a bigger scale, where I know athletes that have done well, like the Dan Jansen story. You had another guy from Canada that came out who's winning every 500, had the most World Cup wins in the history of the 500 meter. He stubs his toe on the start of the 500, doesn't get a medal. And it's always remembered for is at the Olympics, because you never see speed skating on TV in America. Everybody goes, "Oh, I remember him. He fell on the 500." But they don't know how dominant he was for the 6 years before.
That's amazing.
Or however many years before of winning the 500 meter. Dominant. And still has records of the most World Cup wins, that kind of thing. So it is disappointing that people don't know the history of the sport and how skaters are doing annually. But to their credit, I guess, or to their to their credit of I don't want to say the word ignorance of not knowing the sport, because I don't know a lot of sports either, but I never got in this sport for fame or fortune. I got in the sport because I loved it, and to me, the gold medal didn't mean winning, because you never can guarantee you're going to win a lot of money or get a lot of money from a gold medal. There's a gold medal American who won the same year I did. Didn't have a great story because he grew up ice skating, was supposed to win, he won, and quite frankly, his personality on camera wasn't very engaging to the rest of the community, and he got very little speaking engagements or opportunities to make any kind of monetary gains off of his gold medal.
Wow.
Whereas some people will get bronze or silver, and they're out there like Eddie the Eagle, right?
Yeah, that's
the guy's got a book, a movie, and he made some money because of his story. And that's how Americans are. They like the stories. But I was very resilient because I had a goal that I wanted to get to, and whether I was first or 21st, it was very important to me to at least get to 2002, to the games here in my home country, and at least compete. I didn't get to compete, not by my own choice in '98, but I didn't want anything to stop me from competing that I can control in 2002. And there was a lot that went into it. And then September 11th came in 2001, and that changed my life and the direction of my skating as well. But it came down to making those commitments to be here on this ice and just give myself a shot.
Wow. That's so cool. And a lot of people don't realize also that the 2002 Olympics were fraught with all kinds of problems from the beginning. And Mitt Romney had to actually come in and basically save the games.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Mitt Romney would have been, a candidate for the presidency or what he did in Massachusetts or a senator here if it wasn't for that thing that he basically rescued the games.
Yeah, he came in and definitely we didn't know if we were going to have a game. Well, before I was even thinking about coming to Utah for the games, because that was still like a 98 period, he was brought in to kind of revamp it and get them back on track, which he did. He turned the whole games around and got us here with a surplus, the most, I think, surplus of any most successful Winter Games ever.
That's right.
And this foundation that I'm currently operating this facility by in Soldier Hollow and Olympic Park are still running off the endowment of that surplus.
That's amazing.
So that's a great legacy for him and for this state of Utah.
If you look up former Olympic facilities across the world, anywhere that they had the games, it's a trash town. And this is a beautiful facility. It's well kept. Same with Soldier Hollow, same with the bobsled track. It's amazing. It's really, really cool.
Every day we're using this facility with what it was built for. And if you go to Torino, it's a flea market, or a tractor trailer pulling area with dirt everywhere. It's just
crazy. It's
crazy, yeah. But Mick came in, did a great job. The games were here. Again, September 11th was definitely a fork in the road. I think we all came together because of that, and the team definitely did. And I had an incredible experience with that time period, and that helped me, I think, in my success at the games.
That's amazing. And then we mentioned Home Depot. So tell us a little bit about the Home Depot story.
The Home Depot, I couldn't have come at a better time. I am eternally grateful. I don't shop at the other store. I won't even say their store's name. That store that has a blue in it. I bleed orange, and I will drive out of the way to go to Home Depot for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And I tell my family, my friends, I will not talk to someone if they go to the other store sometimes. This program that the Home Depot really kind of owned at one point was called the Olympic Job Opportunities Program. It was put in place by the U.S. Olympic Committee years ago. And back in the 90s and 80s, it was the UPS program pretty much, because a lot of the people that were Olympic hopefuls were working at UPS, being the box sorters or drivers or whatever it was as a part-time job, and you could work part-time and get full-time benefits. It was just an agreement that went to the USOC. The USOC Olympic brand was part of this sponsorship package that went to UPS, and so they were able to use Olympics as part of their marketing. Well, leading up to the games in 2002 here in the U.S., Home Depot took advantage of that. UPS had kind of pulled away. There weren't any other players out there, or big companies in the U.S. that wanted to be part of that. But the Home Depot came up with an idea of, you know what, it would be great to have an Olympic hopeful working for their dreams every day, side by side in the aisles with our store associates.
That's awesome.
So this program developed. I applied for it. This is during that 6 months where we didn't have a coach, and I wasn't sure if I was going to skate again because it's just financially, I didn't know if I could do it. I got accepted. I got the job, and that consistent paycheck, health benefits that you got with it, again, full-time benefits for part-time work. I had to work 1,040 hours a year. I did it all in the summer. I worked my tail off all summer into the fall, and I could focus on racing from November through March.
That's amazing.
And that was the only reason I was able to skate. And every year I got better. I had great support from the people that I worked with in the aisles with. And then what was very fortunate that there were, I think, 7 of us that won medals in 2002. And that would have been, I think, more than most countries at that time. Wow. So they're just a great company. They no longer participate in the program after the 2008 crash, financial crash here in the U.S. But their legacy with the games, there's a lot of athletes up on those boards out there on the walls that work with Home Depot, and they definitely have a very high place in my life.
That's awesome. Love to hear that. Well, we set the stage. Let's take a quick break, and then let's go to the race. Can't wait to hear about it.
All right.
So I want to talk about the race, and I want to talk specifically first about the roof on this building. How long did it take them to replace the roof that got blown off of this building when you won?
Casey, it was so loud in this building. I'm I'm a small guy. I'm 5'3.5". When I'm in that skating position, I'm probably about 2 feet. My ears are probably 2 feet from the ice. I could not hear my skates the entire race. It was so incredibly loud in here. And just even before the race started, as I'm warming up, because I mean, no one really knew my name before the game started. I had a couple of good races here and there. I had a great 5,000, and I remember that morning the Sports Illustrated playbook or the program for the day had my picture on it. It said Derek Parra goes for gold in his favorite race. I wasn't even on the radar for the 5,000, so no one even again knew my name or anything. So there were a couple of chants here for the 5,000, like, "Hey, go Derek!" Good luck. That morning of the 1,500 meter, as I skated around the rink warming up, I heard. Now I'm getting a little emotional here. I heard people calling my name Didi. Now Didi please don't call me Didi when you hear this podcast, but Didi was my nickname growing up in California. And it stuck a little bit when I was in Florida, a little bit, but it's been Derek probably since, 1990-ish. No one calls me Didi anymore. Maybe my mother. And I've told her plenty of times not to. But I was going around this rink, and I heard, "Hey, Derek, go, dear Derek, you can do it. Hey, Didi." And I'm looking, going, "Who's calling me Didi?"
Wow.
And there were people from high school that had gotten tickets. Brittany Bowe was here as a young girl with her coach, who was assistant coach of my coach, Virgil, up in the stands. I had family, friends. It was a total flashback of my life, and I was doing everything I could emotionally to just stay centered and focus on my race. People talk about the race and how it went and the world record and everything, and people say, "How'd you do it?" And I say, "You know what? And the training I did, but you know what? Honestly, I'm more proud of mentally being able to keep it together for that minute and 43 seconds, with all that happened leading up to the games, my daughter being born, living away from my wife, her showing up the night before, September 11th, everything that's going on. Home crowd, the expectations, everything, and just block it out and have this white sheet of ice be my home for just 2 minutes, really. To get through it and execute what I had been executing in my mind for years. That was my whole goal, and that was what I was most proud of, because anything could have happened, right? It's sports. I put my hand down. I almost went down in one turn.
Saw that.
But luckily, I was able just to touch the ice and get back up and stay on course. This building erupted, and I've never heard it as loud as it was that day.
So crazy. I remember that race, and I watched it again today. Before we talk about that specific race, I want you to kind of highlight for the listener the difference in the length of the events.
Okay.
I think sometimes people think about Hayden's accomplishment as like, yeah, he went to the Olympics and he won a few speed skating medals. Like, that's cool.
All of them.
Like all of them. But think about Usain Bolt winning the 100. Okay, he was supposed to win the 100. Now he wins the 400. Like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch. That's a whole different strategy, a whole different race. But he also wins the mile, and then he wins the 10K, and then he wins the marathon. Like that. What are you talking about? That's unheard of.
Right.
So describe a little bit the difference in the races.
Well, in today's speed skating, every athlete is specialized, training specialty for that distance. So back when Eric skated, they didn't have a single distance championship. It was just an all-around championship and a sprint championship. And at that time, Eric was so good in all of them. He trained for all of them. He's a genetic freak. He won everything, and it will never be duplicated again. After that era, they started separating the sprinters from the distance skaters, and you have these separate world championships. But the world single distances are the Olympic Games, a small version of Olympic Games. So now with the way teams are chosen and athletes train, You've got some very specific high power wattage athletes who have a very low endurance capacity. By testing their physiology, they can jump high for about 6 to 10 seconds and then they're done. You've got some guys that can jump a portion of that height or that power or wattage output, but they can do it for 2 minutes. Those are your distance skaters. So when you come into this sport, you're tested to see where you are physiologically. And so the 500 meter for a lot of high-powered athletes, low endurance, can really put technically sound as well. They can put all their power into the ice the second the skate hits the ground. And as you move into other distances, the 1,000 meters are usually 500 meter skaters that are trained a little bit more or have a lap in them left. 1,500 meters they call it the champions race. It's where the sprinters and the distance skaters meet. A distance skater can't get up to speed quick enough, but their last lap is usually stronger than a sprinter because they're failing at that. Their body is failing at that time, and they start to decelerate while the 1,500 meter or distance skater is decelerating less. And that's where I kind of fit in that area. You got a 5,000 meter, which these days is more like a sprint for a distance skater because the times are so fast now. And you got your 10K, which is to me the most grueling race because brutal. You have to be on with timing, focus. Think about running a mile on a track and having your foot land in the same exact spots on the track 400 meters around every single lap of that mile or marathon. It's maddening, right? But that's what skating is like. You want to pattern your laps to be almost the same amount of force each push, the same distance per stroke, and so you can enter the same area on the track and exit the same area on the track, which helps you coordinate all that together into having the same lap times. You can manage your lap times in a distance race, you're going to have success. The shorter races are all about power and speed, so you go out as hard as you can, you hang on. So every distance is a little bit different and caters to a little different physiology than another athlete does.
Totally different races.
Yes.
Totally different distances.
It almost could be a different sport.
Wow. Okay, perfect. You mentioned Eric Heiden. He actually had to perform a surgery right before your race. It just wasn't a surgery that he was used to performing.
Yeah, it was a funny thing. And again, that moment, that day was, I couldn't have asked for a better attitude that day. I was so excited to finally race. I was at the Olympics in my home country, and no one was going to kick me out because of a clerical error or anything. And I was so happy to race. I had success from the 5,000 meter. And again, I believe my moment on the opening ceremony stage with the World Trade Center flag clicked a switch in me that helped me to see more clearly about life than I ever had. I knew how important life was, and I've empathized with so many people, and I've been through so many experiences, but the moment on that stage with the flag, that very spiritual moment that I've had there, a very emotional moment, it triggered something in me. And so by the time I get to this race of the 1,500 meter, anything can happen. I really don't care. I probably did at the time, but when I look back at it, I didn't care as much. I was able to let it roll off my skin a little bit. And as you mentioned, I'm warming up for my race, which is typically about an hour before my actual start time. And I unlaced my lace. Something felt weird on my skate when I was skating. So I get off the ice, I unlace my skate, and my tongue comes out of my boot. So the stitching on the tongue where it attaches to the boot had just over time worn away, and it was very weak, and it pulled out, and it was gone.
That is terrible timing.
Yeah, exactly. That's like I can't even. It's like losing your steering wheel if you're a NASCAR driver right before the race, right?
Brutal.
So I walk downstairs, and I come in with this look, and I have my tongue in one hand and my skate in the other hand, and my trainer's in there, and he goes, "Oh Lord, what now?" So I go, "Hey, does anybody have any string or needle and thread?" And Eric's sitting in there, and Eric's a very calm guy. Love the guy. He, with no show of emotion, goes, "I got some sutures." And I go, "Can you sew my tongue back in?" He goes, "Let's give it a shot." So he comes over, and I'm holding the tongue and the side of the boot. I got my trainer holding the skate itself from the front of the toe box to the back of the heel. And I got the 5-time gold medalist, Eric Heiden, a legend in the sport, with a suturing my tongue back in. And coincidentally, he was the last American to win the 1,500 meter, and he's sewing my skate. So I'm sitting there going, "Is this going to work?" And he goes, "Well, it'll at least hold you for 3.5 laps, or 3 3/4 laps." He was just joking around about it. So I got it in. I looked okay, and then, that was it. And
that's amazing.
We still laugh about that.
That's amazing. That's crazy. The skate in speed skating is like you basically sleep with this thing. Like, this is your skate. You cannot just go and grab a rental and expect it to be the same thing. They're highly custom. It's not like you could have just switched it out before the race. That's totally, totally different. You have sharpnesses and curves that you prefer, and the hardness of the blade. Like, all of those are highly specialized.
You could probably think of it, if you want to relate it to golf in a way, the way the blade radius is in the bottom of the skate, the rounder it is, the less blade contact you have at one point in the ice. The flatter it is, the more contact. But some athletes can skate with a lot of contact, some with less. Depends on, again, your power output and your physiology, how much you can tolerate. And so you tune those skates into your skating, whether you have a bend that bends towards the turns, how flat your radius is, almost to like Tiger Woods tweaking his golf club, whether it's lie, the angle, the shaft, frequency, the grip, everything, right? So he can't just get it, well, maybe he could because he's Tiger Woods, get just a stock club off the shelf. Well, skates, the boots are built around your feet. You make a cast of your foot, you put your foot in alternate, it creates a cast, you send that cast to the bootmaker builds that carbon fiber boot around your foot. So it only fits you. It's better than an isotoner glove, right? Yeah. It's very responsive. Any movement you make, it's going to react to the blade. So if you throw on a rental skate, you're going to have so much play and sloppiness in there, you're not going to have the same control.
No chance.
Yeah, you can't.
Chance.
You can't perform it to anywhere near the capacity you need to.
Wow. Okay. So successful surgery. Skates back online. Tell us about the race.
I remember going up there, and it's funny. Again, it was such a different mindset. I remember telling my dad and my whole family, in a letter before the 1,500 meters, saying, no matter what, just be there, be a spectator. Don't try to get my attention on the ice. I have a routine. You guys never seen me skate before. Let me do my thing, kind of a thing. And my parents were like, sure, no problem. We won't disturb you. Casey, you know this building. The second I stepped on the top ice surface, all I could hear was my dad going, doo-doo, doo, whistling, doo, hey, doo, swinging his arms and everything. And I'm doing my best to ignore him. Like, okay, I just want to stay in my routine. Don't worry about it. And other people around the arena, they could cheer him because you don't know who they are. You don't know their voice, not distinctive. I could probably recognize two voices, my coach, Virgil Dooley from Florida, and my dad, right? My dad used to yell when I was a kid, and I knew Virgil yelling at me for trying to go harder in a race. So I'm skating around, and I can just wave to the other people in the crowd because they're just chanting my name, and I don't know their name, their voice. But my dad, every time I got to that turn, he's cheering, and finally I thought, okay, I'm gonna acknowledge him one time, and maybe he'll stop. And I went like, hey, Dad, and then all of a sudden, hey, dude, and it went on, and I just was thinking, okay, to just focus, and that was one of the things I was proud of. I was able to just kind of block him out. But I got up there, I skated around. My skates felt great after the surgery from Dr. Derek Hyde, and then I remember just being so positive. There was a time that was set earlier in the day. That was a world record, and I didn't even think about it. I knew what I had to do to execute that race. My physiology, as we talked about earlier, if I go out, I learned this about a year and a half earlier, whether I went out at 80%, 60%, or 100%, my lap drops were 1 second and 1.3 to 1.5 seconds.
Lap drops meaning you're getting faster?
Slower.
So
if I went out and I did a 25-second lap, my first lap, no matter if I went, say I went 25-second first lap, my next lap would be a 26.0. and then a 27.5 or a 27.3. If I went out at 80% and then went out, I did a 28.0 first lap, it would be a 29.0 and then a 30.5. Didn't matter. That's just the way my body reacted. I could go out hard, and then I would drop, and then drop again. At the time, most skaters were going out and skating flat races where they go out and do a 26, a 26.1, a 26.3, and a 26.5. And that was the winning combination for most skaters at that time. Well, being on fast ice, we're practicing here, my physiology, my plan was to go out like 1,000 meter, relax as much as I could in that first 700 meters, and then build my next lap and then fight my last lap. So I got out there, and I remember kind of, if you ever watch the video, the coverage usually shows me kind of coming to the line, and I'm kind of jumping around on my skates a little bit, like just kind of dancing on my skates a little bit. And I just kept saying to myself, just believe it, just believe it. I was so excited to be here. I had people in the crowd, my family, my wife, friends from all over my history of my life, and I was finally skating. I was just so happy to be competing. It was just, again, it was a dream come true. Opening ceremonies, everything, it was all coming into this one moment. And I was just so excited and happy. I don't remember a thought of being nervous or anything. I was just kind of just jumping around, tapping my skates, going, all right, it's here, let's do this,
Electricity.
And I had gone to that race so many times in my life in the last few years that I could give you. I used to have a stopwatch in my room, and I'd sit on my bed and I'd close my eyes and I'd go through the race routine and I'd hit start and I would imagine myself skating from all these different angles, front, back, behind, on top of, from the side, and how I wanted to look, where I wanted to be in the track, and I would click my watch on lap splits. And by the Olympic time, I was probably 2/10 off my time.
That's incredible.
And not only that, when I crossed the line in my mind, I would open my eyes and I was crying because I felt the emotional side of what it was like to win. So I felt like I had raced that race. This was deja vu in a way. I got to the line, again, so excited. I don't want to say I had to carry the world. I knew what I had to do. I knew I was capable of doing it because I saw it so many times in my mind. I've done it in practice before. I just had to make sure I was able to do that. So it was almost like I was, on autopilot. The gun went off. I remember getting down into my stance, and it got so quiet.
And your hands on the ice. You were one that liked to have one hand down.
That came from inline skating, that kind of 3-point stance. I got down, and from these cheers, all of a sudden it was silent. I mean, you couldn't hear a thing.
Pin drop.
And then the gun went off, right? And I take off, and it got immediately, this crowd erupted. I counted my steps the way down the straightaway. I knew I had to take so many steps at a certain cadence, and then drop my hips down and take a few more steps, and then drop it down again and into the turn. And everything, I think I hit every step. Things felt very symmetrical. I just kept, again, I didn't try to think of what I was doing, more of what I was going to do. And I got the turn, set myself up the turn, built the speed out, felt really good, and just said to myself, okay, let's just relax. And I try to hit my points that I was talking about earlier in the race, where I wanted to enter the turn, where I wanted to exit the turn, how many strokes I wanted to take, where I wanted to breathe, and I didn't think about lap time so much as I did about technical pieces of that race. I thought if I did the right things technically, the laps would come. So I came around the first split, which is 300 meters, and I remember the crowd going crazy. And as I entered that kind of time trap zone, there was a little lull in the crowd, got a little quiet, and then all of a sudden I crossed the line, and then the crowd erupted. And I remember thinking, okay, that was a good opener. I knew I had to be in a certain time area because the spinners are always really fast, and I catch them towards the end of the race. And I had one of my best. I think I had my best opener. It was something I was shooting for. I came around the turn, and I see my coach. He has a lap board, and it was a 23.5, I believe it was.
Wow,
great. I think it was 23.5. Could be wrong. It's been so long ago. But I remember going, okay, great. And I just came out of turn, and I remember staying nice and relaxed, just taking my time, my strokes, came off the outer and went into the inner, and that is the fastest I ever remember going into that turn. And that's where you saw me put my hand down. I went in the turn, and just for a second, I got off balance. But a few years earlier, I had always asked my coach, why don't long trackers practice on the short track rink? And he said, well, we're long trackers.
Different sport.
Yeah. And I said, yeah, but everything is magnified in there. And I was an inline skater who skated indoors, but won a majority of my world titles outdoors because I had better acceleration, better turns than most people and good straightaways. So I got him years ago to have us do short track racing. Well, it paid off because I went in that turn, got a little off balance, and I brought my left arm, which is normally on my back, rested for aerodynamics and relaxation. I pulled down for a second, just touched the ice, and then bring it right back up in the same stroke, and I caught my balance. And my race could have been over at that point, but I remember just touching the ice, getting going, and then, back to plan. Came out of the split, saw, again, a lull in the crowd for the 700-meter split. Crowd gets even louder. I'm like, this is great. And I come around, and this is probably the only mistake I made, really, in the race, I think. When I look back at it, I still look at the video and kind of just cringe, going, man, I could have won. I lost a few tenths here for sure. When I came out of that turn, and in the moments leading up to the race that day, I remember telling my coach, don't get me excited. Just show me the board and don't say a word. Because I'm already going to try to be calm enough with the crowd going and everything. Well, coming out of that straightaway, my coach has a lap board there. I don't even know if he even put the right lap time up, but he got right in my face. I came out and he's like, "That's it!" He starts swinging his arm.
He was going bananas.
Yeah. And that's the last thing I wanted him to do. Just like telling my dad, don't cheer for me. I told my coach, don't raise your voice, just stay calm and show me the board. Well, he's jumping up and down the backstretch. He's got his arms swinging. And I come out and immediately I get a little excited. I get a little forward. My tempo increases. Instead of having that 1, 2, 3 powerful strokes, I went 1, 2, 3, 4. And all of a sudden, I'm set up incorrectly for the outer turn, going into this next outer turn before the 1,100 meters, which is the critical point in that race because that's where I'm going to drop my lap second down. Yeah. So I'm off step. I have to throw in this really quick little what I call a scooter push.
Notice
just
that
kind
one.
of tapped it, like I didn't even take a stroke. I just shifted my weight on it and then took it back off it so I could try to prolong my skate to get me to the right point, the turn. And I was able to do it, and right there, my legs didn't hurt until that point. Like I felt like I was right on target. I felt good. All of a sudden, because I changed my rhythm and I got in the turning, almost, I like to say I kind of got stuck a little bit because my weight got just a little bit outside of my center of gravity and that angle I was in. Immediately, it put a binding on my thigh, my right thigh. And I went, oh, and I brought myself back into the lane, into my position. And I started to build the turn again, but my legs immediately felt that lactic acid burn, that you feel when you're past that point. And I remember saying, okay, breathe, relax, and I tried to get back on plan. Came across my 1,100 sprint split, and again, the crowd goes even louder. At this point, I don't know what's going on. I come out of the outer turn. I knew I have one more inner to go. On that backstretch, I tried as best I could. I remember telling myself, just skate, don't overdo it. Don't reach. Just sit and skate. I kept breathing. Got it into the final turn, and the words I actually told myself were, "Just stay on your feet." I had nothing in my legs left. I had lost it in that outer turn where I got a little binded. Tried to get it back, but whatever gas I would have reserved for that last straightaway was gone by the time I entered that turn, about 200 meters into the finish. So I basically just picked up my feet and stepped around the turn so that I wouldn't push. We kind of saved my energy for that last straightaway. I got it out of the turn, and then I just, as best I could, tried to skate with as much calm and peace I had and whatever had in my legs that was burning. And you know, when you watch movies sometimes, and they have that camera angle where someone gets scared, and then the camera goes,
yes,
and then everything behind kind of falls back. If you can imagine me through my eyes, I come out last turn, and I see the finish line, and as I take my first 2 strokes, I see that finish line go, and kind of pull away from me. And I just kind of put my head down a little bit and just kept counting my strokes. I just went back to drill of what I've been doing for years. Like 1, 2, breathe. And I went across the line. I looked up and the crowd went crazy. I saw the world record sign and couldn't believe it. And I looked at my coach and I said, that was for you. Because for me, my Olympic race was my 5,000 meter. It's something I'd never done before. Olympics about something extraordinary. And I was second in a race that I've never been the top 10 in, and that was my Olympic race. I don't want to say rose to the occasion because I think that's a kind of a falsely used term. I think athletes don't rise to the occasion. I think they fall into a place where they train, where the work they do. So if you train hard, when pressure situation comes, you're going to perform at where you train. I don't ever believe that you can go in there at 80% and have this 100% performance. If you train 100%, when things are tough, you will race at your 100%, or you will perform at 100%. So I was very happy with that 5K. But again, I was inspired by so many things. But the 1,500, I looked at my coach, that's for you. He had never had coached a Gold-Medalist before. And that was basically, I wanted to give him that race and say, thank you for getting me here. And actually, for the victory lap, he and I carried around the American flag, which is my grandfather's American flag, for our victory lap, because I wanted him to be there because, again, he is symbolic of every coach I had, every teammate I had, every parent, anybody who ever helped me get there. I wanted them on the ice with me, and he was symbolic of them. And so no one does it alone. No one gets to that point alone. There were times where I should have quit. Can't tell how many times. Sometimes I was eating trash out of McDonald's, and to times I didn't have any money, and people were giving me some money just to get through rent. My landlord let me replace all the screens in our apartment complex to help me save on rent. I mean, that was a good thing from Home Depot too. I got to learn how to replace screens.
Oh, nice.
But all these different scenarios that went through my life on the road to the games. That's why I think the Olympic movement is so important, because it's not just one person and their family. It's a community of people, and because getting Olympics is tough, and you're driving from place to place, from coach to coach. We've got some skaters here that are here in the Oval now that are figure skaters that are coming from California and different places, just trying to get ice time with a better coach and moving away, and all these sacrifices for that unknown possibility of the opportunity to have one moment in time in your life to try to be your best, and to have that, to be searching for what ended up being 18 years from when I started roller skating at 14 till I won it at 32, and to have it all play out like this, and the way it did with the people there, the players that were there, and the stands, and my team, and in the U.S., and just I'm blessed. I couldn't have thought of a better scenario of what happened, and what I take most from it is that I'm able to share that 18 years later with you and whoever's listening to this podcast, and the skaters that are coming in, to hopefully try to inspire them, or at least let them know that, nothing's ever certain in life. But I think if you really work at something every day and you completely throw yourself into whatever that is, whether you want to be the best parent, the best student, the best coach, the best lifeguard in the pool, whatever it is, if you truly live your life with a passion for what you want to do, your life is a success, because you're happy. I love coming to work here every day. There's some times where my wife is saying, like, you're at work again? I'm like, yeah, but I love what I do. I don't mind being here 12, 14 hours sometimes, because I know that there's a kid out there who is just like me when I was 14 or 16 or 18 or 20, who didn't have a way to go forward until somebody from outside his circle stepped into it and presented an opportunity to take that step forward. And if I can be that for anybody here that comes through our doors, or out in a park that someone knows that I can talk to their child's soccer team or baseball team or whatever, classroom, if I can be that facilitator of hope, or of continuing to move forward in their journey, or just inspire them to take that journey, that's the hardest thing, right? Is to say, I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to do it. It's hard these days. It's tough being a kid. If I can be that person, then that is the true purpose of my life. Not a gold medal, not skating around in circles. It's trying to positively impact somebody to live their life to their fullest.
It is absolutely amazing. I told you I started in 2014 with speed skating, and
I remember.
Are the chunks of ice that I've taken out of the rink still there?
I remember saying, they were flying up over the pads, but
yeah.
you had a lot of power you put in the ice. Just
a little technique would have helped. We had Kyle Essex on the show, and I commented to him what my experience was like with speed skating, and I told him the same thing that I'll tell you now. I've watched you. I've watched you coach people. I've seen you coach professional athletes. I've seen you coach Olympic athletes, and I've seen you coach bum 30-year-olds that are trying to pick up a sport, and I've seen you coach 8-year-olds. And Derek, I have to say, there's no difference in the love and attention and care that you give to any one of those people. They could be my 30-year-old self that knows nothing about this. It could be an 8-year-old. It could be an Olympic athlete. There's no difference in the care and attention that you gave to those people and give to those people. And I think that is so cool.
Thank you. I think that's how it should be, right? I mean, whether you're 6 or 26 or 66, if you're trying something, you want to get the most out of it, right? You're giving yourself to whatever that is. Okay, I'm going to make a commitment to ride a bike or learn how to play golf or whatever it might be, learn a new language. And that to me it's so hard to make a commitment. And that's when I tell this to kids sometimes. When I was a kid, we talked about it earlier when I was living at home in California. any of the decisions I made were pretty inconsequential in my life, right? What cereal I'm going to eat, if I'm going to go play outside and stick ball, or if I'm going to play baseball, whatever. But when I moved away from home at 17, and I took that step of actually, I remember I had never seen my dad cry. I saw my dad cry once before in my life up to that point. And that's because he was he was doing something with the fuse box. So he had a Honda chopper. You know what a chopper is, a motorcycle?
Oh, yeah.
The long forks, extended forks. And he had done something wrong, rewired it wrong, started up, and it caught on fire. I remember being a young kid and seeing my dad cry the first time, going, wow, because he never really showed any emotion. The second time I saw him cry was when I was walking through the terminal to get on my plane to go to Florida when I was 17. And again, my dad never showed me an emotion. And mostly it was anger, but never any kind of sorrow or compassion. So as we're walking down the corridor, my dad says, if you ever need anything, and his voice starts to crack, and I look over and he's crying. And then my brother and my other brother and my sister and my grandfather and my grandmother all start crying. And it was the hardest thing to take a step, to get to the gate, hand that ticket to the flight attendant, and get on the plane. And I knew that if I didn't do that, I was never going to move forward in my dreams, right? I knew that that was the first time that I ever remember making a decision that absolutely 100% affected my life. And I was making that decision. Got on the plane, bawled my eyes out for probably all the way to Florida. I remember the stewardess at one point, the flight attendant said, "Do you want to get out?" And I said, because I was hysterically crying. I was leaving home, my family, my friends, everything that I knew, going somewhere that I didn't know anybody except for one man who was offered me an opportunity to see if I can get better in something I loved. And I looked at her and said, "No, I've got to do this." And she left me alone the rest of the flight. And I think I cried the whole flight.
Wow.
Thought about all my memories I had from school, and a girlfriend that I'd left, I was leaving as well, and all these different things. So I think to make a commitment like that and try something new, I don't take it lightly. And if I go out and want to learn golf and I have an instructor, I don't want an instructor to just go, "Oh, just to work on this," or "I'll see you in 5 minutes." I would love that instructor, whether it's golf, mountain biking, learning a language, to treat me or to instruct me like they would have wanted to be instructed when they started this challenge, whether it's a sport again or a language, to give me the same attention they would have wanted, and that maybe they got, because they are obviously good at what they do. How did they get that way? Was someone nurturing them? Was someone was very demanding? Did they give them some goals, some intermediate goals to reach, to help get better? And Virgil was like that with me. He broke things down. My coach on ice was like that with me. He helped me. We worked together, but we treated it like it was something important to both of us. So when you're learning, I have just as much stake in it as you do. That's my feeling. I want you to know what it feels like to go around a turn at 20 some miles an hour with your hip in, pivoting on one skate, and feel so balanced and in control that it's electrifying to you. You can be like, "Yeah, that was awesome, right? I want to do it again. I want to go faster. I want to race somebody." That's what I want out of anybody who's in here, in this building, that comes in to try, anybody that I come in contact with, whether I'm trying to coach them in anything I can teach them in life that I've learned, or anything in sports that I've learned. I want that. I want them to have that feeling and that excitement and that love and that passion. And then I want them to share it with somebody else.
That's beautiful. What does it mean to you to work in the building where you had that success? You're still here?
It's a double-edged sword, I got to tell you. So I'm not sure if you noticed, but there's this huge banner of me when you come, right?
I sure do,
yeah.
yeah.
So when that first came out, I even told the foundation, they were talking about, "We want to put a new banner up here. The other one has been tattered from the weather over the years. And what do you think?" And I go, "I think you should put a kid on there." And I gave them photos of a young speed skater. And in the end, they ended up putting Apollo on one side and me on the other side. And I go, "Oh, that's going to hurt." So sure enough, the first day that I come in here and that's up, I can't tell you how many skaters are going, "Oh, how much did you pay for that one?" I go, just razzing me the whole time. And now that I went from skating to be a coach to be now the sport administrator here, the sport director, I'm tasked with compliance, keeping people in compliance. And so when there are rules that were in place for safety in this facility, and one of them is sitting on the pads. You don't want your blades up and your tips up in the air, so if someone falls, they get cut in the face or something. You stab someone in the face with your blades up. You don't want them jumping over the track because a runner can come by, you can hit them. And there all these different rules that have been put in place over the last 18 years here, after the last 20 years here, for safety reasons. And a lot of the skaters don't follow them. And it becomes a liability. So when I'm out there and I see somebody doing something that's not in our policies, I'll point it out. So DP hasn't really it's not really Derek Parra anymore. It's like the Derek Parra police, or it's like Derek police. And they joke, like some of the athletes joke around about, I think they have some respect for me, but it isn't fun going out there and telling a young aspiring athlete, like, hey, don't sit in the pads, or hey, you got to spread out, or hey, no more than 10 people in a pace line, or hey, nowadays, hey, put your mask up. Yeah. You know, it's hard, but I think it's necessary. And if I got to be the bad guy to not have someone infected by something that's just a very easy thing to do, or an inconvenience, or they forget about it. I know as a skater, and you can probably attest to this, you're working on something, you're inside your head, you're skating around, and all of a sudden, oh shoot, you know, I'm right up on somebody, or I forgot to put my mask up because I'm thinking about my technique. And so that happens a lot, and I understand that. I can empathize with them. But still, I have to be able to be that person that says, hey, come back, got the lines here, you passed a little bit, come back a little bit. And I can help them dance in that line, but as long as it doesn't jeopardize the safety of anybody else in this facility, because again, I want people to leave here happy and safe. Yeah,
well, that's great. Well, you mentioned that you love your job, you love what you do, you love the programs that you work with. I mean, just for me, like, I have to say thank you for everything that you've been in my life and the impact that you've had. And I discovered a sport that I didn't know much about, and now I know a lot about, and it's amazing. It's fun to watch. I met great people. I had an amazing time, and there was something really cool.
You've always been a great guy about. I mean, from the time you stepped in here, you're always very positive. The kids in the team loved you, and when you left, they're like, "Hey, what happened to Casey? Where did he go?" You know. But it was always fun seeing you. Rising, stepping up the challenge of learning the sport, and we miss you out here. And you ever come back, you're always welcome just to get some exercise. But you're one of those people in my life that, and when you call me to do this, I said, absolutely, because you've been a great person since the day I met you.
Well, it's been an absolute honor. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But it's been an honor to talk to you. It's been an honor to be your friend over the years. I had a bunch of questions about training and nutrition, how that's changed over time. Maybe we can talk about that another time. Find another time that we can hook up. That's great. What is one thing that you would like to leave with our listeners in this conversation?
Oh man, that's a big question. I'd say one of the things that I think I value the most in people is that self-awareness, who you are, who's around you. I would love to see more of that in the world. For me, as a person, sometimes that's frustrating when people, and you see a lot in sports, right? Top sport, they're very narrow focused because they want to get to that top of the podium and they don't see what's happening around them. But a lot of times that's damaging to the people that are around you and beneath you. And I experienced a lot of that as a kid, of people who didn't treat me the best on my way up. And I made a point when I was on my way down to give people that credit and that their due for chasing their dreams. So if you're out there, before you jump to conclusions sometimes, or you're out there worried about you getting to work on time or you getting someplace here or whatever, think about those around you, and I think it makes a difference in everything we do, whether you're driving on the highway or in a mall shopping or in a rink, exercising like this. Just being mindful of those around you and be the best person you can be. I think I'm not saying I'm perfect, but every day I try to be the best I can for others. So hopefully it makes me better.
I love that. That's wonderful advice. Where can people go if they want to find you?
My office. I'm here every day. That's awesome. I'm at the Oval pretty much every day. Otherwise, you can the email address for the foundation here is dparra@UOLF. If you ever want to just have a question or know anybody of our programs. I don't think my book's online anymore. I think we sold out of it. I think I'm definitely due for a new run of copies, a new edition. I'm pretty easy guy to find. Just ask around.
That's awesome. That's been great. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm really grateful for you, for the impact you've made in my life, and everybody else that I've seen you make an impact in. And so thank you very much for appearing today and being on our show.
You're the man.
Awesome. That's been another episode of Boundless Body Radio. So thank you again so very much for listening to this bonus episode with Derek Parra. We've actually recorded 2 different episodes with him. So this one that you heard was episode 31. We also hosted him again and released that episode on episode 43 on January 17th, 2021. Both were really great. If you want to go check that other one out as well, I think you'll get a lot out of that. He's such a wonderful and caring human, and I really treasure our relationship, and I think that story is just so special. So happy to really share that with you today on this bonus episode. As always, if you don't mind, please go over to Apple, give us a 5-star rating and review. It's a great way to get this show out to more people and to share our message with others out there. Cheers, and thank you very much for listening to Boundless Body Radio.